Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Rebuild It. This is a strange episode, a different one where we're talking to you via Zoom this whole episode because of some kind of special circumstances, which I'll let Andy tell you here in a minute. But I've been working late at the office tonight, and my mom just happened to drop by and brought me some chocolate chip cookies, which are laying here on the desk, and I'm very much wanting to grab them and eat them because they're delicious. And I'll try to hold off until we finish with this call.
So this week we're going into the history of probably our most recognized project we've done, which is the yellow SCCA T2 Solstice. So we're going to get to meet Chris, who is the guy who actually had the Solstice whenever the car was totaled, and we're going to get to figure out exactly what happened to it, why it seemed to have fire damage, but also not fire damage, and why it also seemed to have like some flood damage, and just he's going to give us the entire story of what happened to the car and how it got in our possession. We're also going to get to meet Bobby, who's the guy who bought the car from us. And Bobby had some unique skills, a unique set of skills that allowed him to find Chris to begin with, and then just connect all three of us together and allowed us to make this entire video. Dad, you didn't even make it through the whole thing.
Sorry.
Enjoy.
On to the show.
Thanksgiving weekend of 2020 was a nice weekend here in Iowa, which is rare. Usually we put that car away in, probably mid to late October, early November at the latest, but it was 75 degrees Thanksgiving weekend. And so we had it out Thanksgiving weekend. I always waxed it and put it away in this storage building at the end of the season. And I typically would take it and have it, a fluid service done on it and have the tires rotated, that kind of thing, just in the fall, so that whatever day got nice in the spring, I could pull it out and it was ready to go for the year. It was just pulled in there with the top still down on it, and we hadn't gotten this, there was, I think my wife had a hat in there and a couple of other items, and so we hadn't gotten any of that stuff out. I had not waxed it for the year. It had not gone and gotten its fluid, service or any of those things that I had traditionally done. It was just pulled in there and left with the top down. I thought, well, gosh, in the next 2 weeks, I'll get to this and get it put away for the winter. I had a cover that always went on it in the winter. I plugged in a battery tender in the winter. It was always very well taken care of. And I knew where, there weren't very many, but I knew where every chip was on that vehicle. And we get the call on the night of, it was middle of the night, it was about 2:45, 3 o'clock in the morning on December 5th. And I had security cameras in that building, and I immediately checked the security cameras, and they didn't come on. And I've got a Wi-Fi thermostat in there, and that didn't come up. And so I jumped out of bed, and my wife wanted to go with me. And so, of course, my son heard the commotion, one of my sons. So they jumped in the car, and I said, we're going to roll around the corner here, and you need to be prepared for what we might find. And so when we came around the corner, they had the street that the warehouse, the building sits on, blocked off. And they were trying to get in touch with us. And my son, who is in Lawrence, Kansas, is actually the one who called us because one of his friends coming home from work worked in a restaurant bar. And so at 2:45, he was on his way home and saw the fire. And he had already FaceTimed my son in Lawrence to tell him that the building was on fire. So my son knew how bad it was. And he was in Lawrence to take his finals at the University of Kansas. And his car was actually one of the other vehicles that was in this building at the time. So we lost that car as well. And that was a BMW X5. And so anyway, long story short is that he calls us and he says, hey, are you aware that the warehouse has got a fire? I think you need to get over there. And I said, I'm processing this as I'm coming awake at 2:45 in the morning. We got dressed real quick and went over there. But when we came around the corner and got past the police that had the road blocked, they were trying to get in touch with us, as I said, and they're on the ladder truck with a hose just pouring water right through the hole in the roof, right where that car was parked. And the water is just flowing out of the building. I mean, hundreds of gallons a minute are going on this fire. And it was a pretty big fire at that time, and you've seen those pictures. But they finally got it down about maybe 45 minutes to an hour later where we could at least get close enough to the building and they would let us look in. I've got some of those videos that I can share with you, but I knew they had just filled that car with water because I knew the top was down on it. And sure enough, when we finally got in the building about 3 days later, it was sub-freezing, and there was about 4 inches, 5 inches of water in the bottom of that car, both sides, both the right and left side. And that's why when you guys got into it, you found the corrosion on that electrical, I think you called it an ICM, because that would have been under the frozen water. Well, then once it got cold here, it stayed cold for 60 days, and it took 45 days before they would let us remove the car because there was 5 different investigators involved in the investigation of the fire. Fire had nothing to do with anything that was on the north side. There was a partition wall there that did its job and pretty much kept the fire out of that car. So that's why there was no real fire damage. You just had soot damage, and you had the water damage. Yeah. And there was, if you saw those initial pictures I sent you, the drywall got so wet from all that water that came down, it just fell in the car.
Right.
Yeah.
So the studs of that wall were still in pretty good shape, but you can see that the drywall, just with all the weight of the water, took it off and it fell in the car. So again, once we got access to the vehicle 30, 45 days later, we thought, well, we'll keep this car. And several people looked at it and they said, I would not. You just don't know what you're going to find. I mean, even if you take the insurance salvage value,
that's very true.
You just don't know it, and we didn't yet know what the salvage value was going to be, and the insurance company was offering a pretty good settlement at that point in time. So we took the settlement and went to Copart. I didn't hear anything more about it until Bobby called me that day. So that's the background of the car.
Have you guys told the story yet? Sorry, you can't see me, but have you told the story about how Bobby found Chris?
We talked about it. I was on spring break with my family. We were in Snowmass, Colorado skiing. And it's about 2:00 in the afternoon, and I'm on a ski lift, and I see that the Waukee Fire Department is calling me, and I'm like, well, that's odd. And man, we haven't talked to them in 2 years. I hope everything's good with all those guys, because I got to know them pretty good when we were talking every day there for about a month. Anyway, about 10 minutes later, you don't have good cell coverage where we were, and I get off the phone or get off the lift, and I've got a text message, and the guy says, he's a nice guy, Clint, the fire chief. He says, there's a guy calling me about one of the vehicles that was in your building, and he said, I can either give him your phone number, or he's going to find you because this is public record. Which way do you want to have it? I thought, well, I don't have, I'd love to hear what he's got to say about the car. I'm wondering what ever happened to it. So I told him, go ahead and give him the number. Well, I no more than got to civilization a day or two later, and Bobby had left me a couple of messages, and we connected, on maybe Monday or Tuesday after that weekend. And Bobby said, you got to check this out. These guys are on YouTube, and they've got everything video to what they did to that car. I thought, no, that's probably not our car. And well, then I pulled it up and I looked at it, and sure enough, it's our car. You found the Golf Channel hat in the back. You found the Kansas City Royals hat in the back. You found my wife's bottle of water. So that was our car.
Well, Bobby and his career was an investigative reporter for a television station. So, Bobby, how did you find Chris to start with? How did you go about that? Because I sure couldn't find anything when we were looking at the car.
Well, first thing I did was I noticed you guys had made your trip up to Iowa to get the car, and so and then I had the Carfax, so I looked up the dealerships in the area and saw where it had been serviced, and it said right outside of it's a Waukee, I guess. And so I said, well, the population of Waukee is 20,000, 30,000 people. It can't be that big, so the fire department would certainly remember a fire involving a nice little yellow Pontiac Solstice. So I looked up the fire department's website, and I emailed the chief, and I said, did you by any chance work a fire involving a yellow convertible? And he emailed me back, and he said yeah. I said, I know the guy. I'll contact him and see if he wants to give you your the phone number. So he sent me the phone number back, and I called Chris, and I got a recorded message, and I said, this guy's never going to call me back because he doesn't know who I am or what, He might think I'm another insurance investigator or something. So anyway, I called again, left another message, and I didn't realize he was out of town. So he did call me back, and then we started connecting the pieces together. And I said, well, yeah, I've got your car, and I said, I purchased it last week. And I said, you wouldn't believe it's the same car. I said, go to YouTube and watch Rebuild It's, they've got 4 or 5 part series on rebuilding the car. And by that time, I think while I was talking to Chris, he was pulling it up and he said, oh yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
And another weird thing about that was that, Bobby, in your neighborhood, the whole idea that got you started thinking about or even learning about a T2 was that somebody in your own neighborhood had one for sale that was an automatic, right?
A half a mile from me, there's a lady that has the automatic, and she had it for sale. And then I think it was Andy that reached out and said, well, we've got one for sale too.
You had posted something in the Solstice Facebook group and said, okay, there were 88 of these SCCA T2 Solstices produced. How many are still out there? And this is like right after, like that had just got the paperwork back in from the state or whatever for the title and all that stuff. I said, hey, we've got one and it's for sale. And then like you immediately messaged me and we talked back and forth for, I don't know, like a day or two, just different things. And I said, hey, I said, we rebuilt it on YouTube or whatever. And you're like, you guys out of Missouri, right? I said, yeah. And so then you went and I think watched all the videos that we had put up on it or whatever. Yeah.
So Bobby,
you managed to find that somehow.
My wife used to have a BMW convertible and she loved it. And we had 3 boys and that became a very impractical vehicle for her to have. And so she's been driving a big Yukon Denali since we had kids. And she always missed that convertible. And so long story short is we started looking for some convertibles when right around that 2006, 7, 8 timeframe. And I found it on eBay, which is funny because I had never thought I'd buy a car on eBay. But the part of that story that's interesting, and this, you got to go back now, a ways, 10 years, 12 years to get to an era. eBay wasn't probably thought of the way it is thought of today. Right. And, certainly a sketchy place to go shopping for a car and somebody wanting cash out of your pocket before you'd ever seen it and that kind of thing. But there was a dealership, a Pontiac dealership, I believe it was called Sweeney in Youngstown, Ohio. And they were an exclusive Pontiac dealer. And the plant for Pontiac, where that car was made, is somewhere very near them in Youngstown, Ohio. It might even be in Youngstown. So I called this guy and I said, hey, what do you want for this car? And he's like, well, and of course it was a big number. This is a special edition car or whatever. And I was like, well, yellow's my wife's favorite color. And I'm interested in the car. So we went back and forth and we settled on a number. And I was somewhere on business and it was like a Thursday or Friday. And I flew from wherever I was on business and picked up the car and drove it back home and gave it to my wife. So that car was just an extra car at that time for us. We used it she called it her ice cream getter, and we drove it on date nights and things like that. It was just a fun car to have. So that was kind of how it was acquired, and that's why it only has 17,000 miles on. The only thing that she was sad about in that warehouse that we lost was that car. She lost some other things. We all lost. We say it's a blessing. Thank God it wasn't our home, and thank God we were able to, we had insurance and nobody was hurt and all those wonderful things are fine. Mm-hmm. It was just things. Right. But we lost everything that we had in that building. And so she would Google periodically, yellow car for sale. And one Sunday night, and I hear her screaming from her office, oh my gosh, you're not going to believe it. Come in here right away. So I come running around the corner. She said, there's a Pontiac Solstice exactly like ours, 33,000 miles for sale in Denver, Colorado. And so this is a Sunday night. I said, because I had told her, I said, there's no way you're ever going to replace that car. And as I went through the settlement with the insurance company and then learned that there was only 88 of them, I was like, there's no chance you're finding that car again. Didn't really bother to even think about how many of them might be left and what kind of condition they were. And because ours was in such good shape, I never thought I'd find one that was even close to it. So I had just mentally moved on, but she had not, and she kept Googling that. So all of a sudden, she finds it. So I called the lady on Monday morning, and I said, hey, you're going to get a call from a lady named Julie in a few hours. She's going to ask you about that car, and she's going to want to buy it. When she calls you, I just wanted to just tell her it's sold. And so I had to go to Denver on business again. And so I flew out there. She thought I was flying home, and I drove that car home, and she got a replacement, the exact same car, on her birthday. So we have replaced it with the exact same Solstice. The downside is it wasn't nearly as well cared for, and it has 34,000 miles on it, so it's double the miles. And has a few bumps and bruises, but she's happy about the car. So
that's a cool story.
That's super cool. Yeah.
I can't believe you found another one.
Yeah. So we have another one in the same, well, not the same building, a building right across the street from that building that we've acquired since for the same purposes, and it's stored in there with a cover on it right now, just like the other one was.
Oh wow,
so crazy. Yeah. So out of 88, we know where three of them are.
3 of the 88. Yeah, you got 2 in one neighborhood, and you got 1 back with me again. So
I searched out a personalized tag, Missouri tag for this car, and they wouldn't let me have Smokey. They wouldn't let me have Toasty. So
what'd you end up with?
I ended up with a SCCA T2, which they let me have.
Oh wow, cool.
That's
So,
great.
and I even thought about Phoenix rises from the ashes, because that's what the.
Oh, wow.
That's what but of course, the thing when I went down and picked it up, I had the top down on it, drove it back to St. Louis, and Chris and Andy had given me a hat to wear, so I had a hat to wear in my convertible on the way back to keep my hair from going everywhere. Yeah, they did a great job. My neighbors can't believe that's the same car from those photos. Oh my God.
So Chris, you said that the fire happened in December, like early December?
So the south half of that building was a woodworker, which is where he was a hardwood floor restoration guy.
Right.
And of course, this was during COVID. And so with schools shut down and churches shut down and gymnasiums shut down and health clubs shut down, his business was extremely healthy. Anything that had a hardwood floor in it, he was restoring. All he used my building for was to store his material. So they would drop off, and this is what made the fire so hot, they would drop off palletized racks of hardwood flooring. So you can imagine 8 feet long, waist high, oak, maple, whatever the different flooring was, and they had it in there. Well, that was one of their service vans. So in the picture where you see that van pulled out, and we had cameras in the building. We didn't have cameras obviously on his side because it was a tenant renter leaser relationship, so I couldn't have cameras there. But the fire department went through our cameras from the time they saw a glow around the door, clear through when the cameras went out. But you can actually see the garage door implodes due to heat. They think it started to go up just because of an electrical shortage, and then it falls down. It draped over the top of that van. But the answer to your question is that van was one of the working vans. It arrived in there around 5 o'clock or 5:30 that night when they finished work. And then the fire started, or when the fire department was dispatched, was around 2:45 in the morning. So 6, 7, 8 hours later, but the fire started an hour before the fire department actually even got dispatched.
So our first video went up on this car in July. So it sat for like 7 months.
And I can tell you why that was, because as I negotiated, it took me probably 5 months to settle with the insurance company. They held it to Copart. As soon as the building was released, which was within 30, 40 days, it went to Copart. And then it sat at Copart because I hadn't closed with the insurance company. Their opening offer on that car was insulting, $10,000, something like that. And being an insurance agent, I said, that you're not even in the game. And so we negotiated back and forth. Well, finally, I found a video online that talked about how there was only 88 of these cars made. Your video would have been, if I'd have found your video that you made on this car when I was negotiating, that would have been fantastic. But I didn't have that resource yet. So I was able to find an article and a video on how rare this car was, and we went back and forth. Well, then they didn't believe it was a T2 Champion. And I said, well, all you got to do is look at the embroidered seats, the stickers on the side. I said, they didn't do that in the gray stickers down the hood. I said, they didn't do that for any other Solstice that they made. So they actually hired a guy that was a car expert and flew him to Des Moines to look at it. And then it took him a week or two to write a report that said that it really was what it said it was, because they claimed that the serial number didn't match the T2 designation. But going back, Bobby, to your point, they didn't run them in a series. They just pulled them out, like this one's going to be it, and they made it.
Wow.
So anyway, but the insurance company lost on both sides because we ended up with a good settlement from them. And then when I replaced the car we bought very similar to what Bobby told me he paid for the car he got from you guys.
Well, that's good. One more thing I want to touch on is how Bobby, you are kind of a car guy now since you retired.
Yeah.
What other special car do you have that you could tell them about? It's a very rare bird.
I've got a 1981 Kelmark GT, which is a kit car that was only manufactured for 10 years, and there's about 300 of them left on the road. And the one I have now was found in a warehouse in Cincinnati. It sat for 30 years. The fiberglass was all cracked on it. It had spider cracks all over it. So had that redone. The car was purchased by someone in Tennessee who is actually a Volkswagen drag racer. So they put a pretty spiffy, high-powered engine in this thing. And so it's sitting in my garage right next to the Solstice. And the other day I had my garage door open, and I noticed two cars parked in front of my house, and two of the workers up the street were stopped and looking at my cars. And I said, come on, I'll tell you about them. So like every time I have my garage door open, I've got my own little car show here.
Bobby, it's a fun car. I'm glad it ended up in good hands. I'm a little jealous, obviously. I told you that in our first conversation. I publicly want to ask for first right of refusal to buy it back if you ever decide you want to get out of it.
Yeah, let me enjoy it at least one summer.
Oh, of course. No more than 18,000 miles though when I get it back.
I've only put 200 on it since I've had it. So
perfect. It's been just a crazy story, and I'm really glad it ended up in some nice people's hands. And it's great to have met all of you. And I appreciate very much the care that you took in restoring it, because it was that special to us. And so kind of fun to have this all come together the way it did.
Yeah, Mark and Andy did a terrific job of putting this back together, and of course it's got a branded title now. But you know, it's not to me, it's not a salvage, it's not a rebuild, it's a recondition, because that's what they did. They reconditioned the car. It had no physical damage, from the fire. It just had soot on it.
Soot, yeah. and a lot of water.
And it was everywhere.
Yeah,
soot everywhere. Well, I
didn't scrub it with a toothbrush.
Well, that's what I was going to say. When I saw you guys, the care and time and effort that you took when you were trying to like do the dash, and I was thinking, man, I don't have the patience for that. And it was my car, and we took very good care of it. So it really made me respect what you guys do and the care that you take. And it is too bad it's got a salvage title, because as you know, there was, out of that ICM, that was it. It just needed some TLC and cleaned up. I'm sure there's been cars that have been wrecked much worse than that don't have a salvage title. And it's sad that one does, but I guess only because it was sold out of insurance is why that happened and went to an auction.
Yeah, exactly.
Those Solstices, they'll total those out for pretty much anything now, just because of mainly of parts availability. Because especially if you have any damage to that rear quarter, they'll total it out because you have to replace that entire thing.
Exactly.
Well, I'll tell you the last funny thing that I can think of to this story is that I'm going through your video, and you guys stopped along the way to plug it in to see if you could get it to start. And I think when you had that door open, you poked on the cup holder, the passenger side cup holder, which is probably the worst piece of engineering that they did in that car, that cup holder. Well, I had just replaced that in about October of that fall because it had broken. And it will break again because it's horrible engineering in a great little car. There's literally just a spring and a little plastic tab there's not much to it, and it died over time. And the one between by your elbow works fine. Yeah. But I found it on eBay or Amazon or something, and I got it and replaced it. So you guys are about the fifth time that cup holder had popped out, probably because it was brand new before the fire. Yeah. So the one thing you didn't have to fix was probably the worst piece of engineering in the car.
Yeah, I've done probably 5 Solstices on our channel, and that's the only one that's worked, the cup holder that's worked.
I had a lot of fun watching your videos because as you were pulling things out, and you would say things like, well, maybe water got to this. I'm like, well, yes, it did. You said, well, the top must have been down. And I said, yes, it was. I'm talking to you like you were in the same room with me.
Well, I told Bobby the next time we buy one and we can't figure out what to do, I'm going to sick him on finding out the story. Since he's an investigative reporter, and we'll show it on the video, and then people will know what's going on with it. Well, guys, I really want to thank you for zooming with us, and I appreciate the stories and everything. That's going to really explain a lot to the guys that watch our channel. And I'm hoping, Bobby, that this isn't the last time I get to talk to you. I hope I get to ask you about helping me out with some stuff in the future. Right. Trying to find some of these videos.
Well, guys, thank you very much. If there's anything I can do, let me know. Okay. I really do appreciate what you guys have done. And Bobby, thanks for connecting. It's been a fun experience.
Well, guys, hope you enjoyed this special episode of Rebuild It, and that answered some of your questions about what happened with the T2 and why it was in the shape that it was in. So, Andy, who do we want to thank on this?
We want to send a special thanks to Chris for being willing to not only return Bobby's call to begin with, but also just to meet with us and tell us the story of exactly what happened. And also just a huge thanks to Bobby for being willing to do the same thing and just hooking us all up so we could make this cool video for you guys.
And to my mom for the cookies. Thanks, Mom.
See you guys next week.
And always remember, don't retire it if you can rebuild it. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in and watching this week's episode of Rebuild It. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any awesome content. Have a good one.